Underdog Fantasy is the fastest growing fantasy app and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Just jump on UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft your team, and that's it. And if drafts aren't your thing, they also have a pick'em game where you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Use promo code RADIO, and Underdog will double your first deposit when you sign up with up to $100 in bonus cash. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's promo code RADIO. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Psychovertical podcast. It's me, your host, Andy Kirkpatrick. Sorry, it's been a while since I did my last podcast. I think it was before Christmas, and I think when I came back from being on tour, for some reason I was feeling a bit sort of flat, I guess you call it. So I was not feeling very inspired to do anything. So and then I got the C word. I got a C word at Christmas, along with everybody else in the house. So we were all, even like Noah. So it was funny. You could see the impact of getting COVID on all the different generations. So in the house, there's like a 1-year-old, 20-year-old, 36-year-old, 50-year-old. So it was so Noah, who's like 1, he was like ill. He had like a temperature in the night, and then he was completely normal next day. And then Ewan was like, he was just ill like Saturday, Sunday, and then Vanessa was ill probably like sort of, she was probably ill for about a day or something, day or 2 days. Then I was like more ill, and I was like in bed. I was feeling quite ill, and I was like laid there, and Vanessa's like she's not very what's the word, compassionate. So she just sort of came in and like opened the curtains and was like doing her hair or something, and then she looked at me and she was like, "Oh my God, I think you look like you're gonna die," and I was kind of just feeling like I was going to die. And she's like, "Do you want something to eat or drink or something?" I was just like left there to die in bed and of neglect. And I was like, "Oh, maybe bring me an apple." And she was like, "Oh, fucking hell, you must be dying. Who wants an apple?" I don't know why I wanted an apple. I think it was like, hallucinating or something, thinking I was something else. Vegan. Get me some non-meat. Get me a non-meat beef burger or something from McDonald's. Vegetable based. Get me a vegetable based snack or something. So that was funny. So yes, I've been meaning to do a podcast. So I think I should do one. I've been busy trying to update me, myself, and I. So I've just been fannying on with that. I don't know why. It seems like really pointless doing. It's like if you're gonna put time into something, you should really put time into something that's got mass appeal. So it is a kind of pointless doing it like a book about soloing. So I guess I don't know. I've been doing some fiddling around with quite a few like books and things, because it's not a Kindle version of Me, Myself, and I. So I'm trying to do before I do a Kindle version, I might as well rewrite some of it. So there's like a lot of spelling mistakes in that book. So I'm gonna try and feed it through Grammarly or something, and try and sort out what some of the grammatical errors. So what should I talk about today? I have got some questions. Have I got any other Have I got any other stuff? I've had lots of. It's funny when I don't do a podcast for ages. I get quite a lot of. I get like emails from people asking if I've been if I've been cancelled or something. Like Joe Rogan, lots of people. Roy Chubby Brown has asked for all his songs to be taken down off Spotify. So no, I've not been cancelled. I think most people, you kind of cancel yourself, don't you, or something. Like someone was asking me why I'm not on sort of Instagram and all that. I have actually got like an Instagram account because Ella, my daughter, set it up for me. But my old Instagram account and why I don't do that anymore. And I was just, it is. You can either have this like conversation about how terrible it is and it wastes all your time and all that kind of stuff, but it is a bit fun. It's a bit like someone who's asking why you don't do Fight Club anymore, and they're like, oh, because basically at the end of the day I was just like in a pub car park, like beating people, getting beaten up by people, and getting beaten up by people is probably quite good fun. So yeah, I had an interesting message from someone who was saying that he'd been listening to all my podcasts one after the other, like in one big mega dump of podcastingness, and it's interesting if you just listen to the same podcast like over and over and over again, not the same podcast, but if you listen to all the content of somebody, you just hear the same anecdotes, repeated again and again, and it's kind of impossible to do that because, like, often I can't remember if I've had a conversation with you on this podcast or was having a conversation with a real person in real life. So you just have to just not think about it and just repeat yourself. But anyway, it was interesting. He said that I often bring up class quite a lot in my class, in my podcasts and growing up and that kind of stuff. And I suppose to defend myself, I think class is something that is one of that's kind of been sort of disappeared from conversations or trying to understand anything in life. And it's actually, I think it's like probably the most important thing in society is where you begin. Like we're always talking about like gender and minorities and all that kind of stuff, race, but not all that's just bullshit. That doesn't mean anything. That's just like, it's not the it's not the icing on the cake. If the icing was made out of shit, that's what it is. It's shit icing on the cake. But really, it's not about class and stuff. Is not, you shouldn't use it as a weapon to like hit people over the head who are not, weren't as fortunate as you were. But it is quite a good filter or like lens to understand why you're an ignorant fucker and you don't understand anything or whatever. So yeah, or you've never had garlic or whatever, or you eat pot noodles, think pot noodles are nice, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting I think it's a very good thing to think about, like your tribe, what class you grew up in, and especially if you want to try and elevate yourself into something else. So yes, I do apologize. Now if someone said that, I won't say it again. So so anyway, I've got a few questions here that some people have sent us. So I shall read through some of these. I don't really know what they say, but I'm going like it's live podcasting. So hi Andy, I owned a copy of Me, Myself and I was so quite a few people ask about buying books. If this person wants to buy a book direct from me, I don't sell books direct because it's like the postage from Ireland for some reason it's like super expensive. So, and I can't be asked going to the post office. So anyway, so I also have some questions on winter big wall soloing. Is it worth trying to make a multi-fuel stove setup or stick with trying to keep gas canisters warm? Seems like a less faff and risk of setting anything on fire. Yeah, that is well, both both are very important. Either to make sure if you're in like sub-zero temperatures, that you can have like a real pain with the gas, and especially as the gas gets sort of less than half full, there is like a real massive drop off in like the performance of a lot of stoves. So you really want a stove that you really want to get the cooking done as soon as possible, and be like as efficient as possible. Like often you can get to the stage where if you've got like shitty gas, very, very cold temperatures, and not super efficient stove, you can get to this point where you feel like the water is cooling quicker than it at the same temperature that it's heating up in a way. So you can be sat there for like half an hour trying to like heat some water, especially if you're not using a lid or whatever. So once you put like your bare hands onto the gas, which is not ideal, or you can dip the gas into some water, or you can some kind of have some system where you're passing the heat through some copper back onto the canister, then suddenly the thing will like spring to life and it'll be roaring away, and you'll do your food very quickly. Like we do, people are kind of obsessed with how quickly the stove is going to boil water, but I think you can get a bit too carried away. But it just has to be efficient and boil it, as quickly as possible. But you don't want to be boiling it to where you're pumping out loads of carbon monoxide. There is like that's so one thing is a carbon monoxide problem. If you're going to use like a reactor or a jet boil or any of these kind of sort of integrated stove, pan, cup things, you're pumping out like a hell of a lot of CO2. So you have to really make sure your stove is very well ventilated. Like you have to make sure any stove is well ventilated, but especially that kind of stove, because you will end up like getting carbon monoxide poisoning. So if it was like a very like a couple of days on some sort of winter wall, then it's probably just easy just to set up a system where you either buy a hanging setup for a reactor, or a sort of cobble one together with some wire or something, and just use that. And I would definitely, like, I used to have a really good, it was a what do you call it, a heat exchanger, and it was actually magnetized, so it sort of fitted onto the side of the pan, outside of the Epigas canister. I think it was actually made by Epigas. It was from Japan, and then the thing kind of fitting inside the flame, so it was like sending the heat down. So it was a really good idea. It was like aluminium with like some sort of heavier weight material that was going into the flame. Maybe you could make something up like that, but you just have to make sure that the heat is kind of spread around. It's you don't want to be like superheating the outside of your canister, because it might like explode. So anything like that is always kind of very dodgy. I remember Paul Pritchard. I made him a stove. This like reactor. No, it was a bomb. It was called. It was like a Markel stove with. Anyway, but it had copper that went through the flame, and then it came down on either side around the canister, and then it was held in place with some foam, like a foam sort of cup that went on the bottom of the canister. So when it was hanging, it worked quite well. But I think he was using it like in the summer on like Strawn Ullerdale or some Scottish mountain crag, and he said it was, the foam was melting and it was like dribbling on the portal edge or something. So yeah, you really want to save those kind of things for when it's super cold. Now the using a multi-fuel stove, like I probably wouldn't use the only stove I'd probably use would be, I'd probably maybe try and set up some system using a whisper light. I probably just use white gas. If you want a multi-fuel stove, like you could use petrol, but white gas it would be better. And the good thing about using a stove like that, if you take an extra, if you have more than one fuel bottle, and you also have like more than one pump, like take a spare pump, it is kind of like an indestructible stove. Like with all the reactor stoves and all that kind of thing, that there are, they're not as robust as a stove like that. You get problems with the gas canisters, you get problem with the stove. There's there's loads of things that could go wrong with them. And so if you were to build a liquid fuel stove like a Whisperlite, you could use like a good thing about a Whisperlite, like there are other stoves, but for me, the Whisperlite is a stove I've used like for years and years and years and years, and I've used it for like multiple months on end. And they're very tough. They're easy to control. They're not like massively, if you're a Michelin star chef, you're gonna struggle with it. But they're kind of easy enough to control, especially if you just want to boil water, which is what you're probably gonna do if you can have like one pan that you're gonna boil all your water in, and integrating into a pan. Like the good thing about like the XGK stove is you can actually just bolt you can bolt the you take all the legs off and just bolt it, or you could leave the legs on, but you can kind of bolt the kind of housing onto the bottom of a big pan, and then you can put your pan you're cooking on the inside. So you could do all sorts of efficient things. But probably what I would do is I would somehow try and integrate it into the bottom of a larger pan. But when you drill instead of standing on the legs, you want to drill in some 3 to 4 like some bolts that go in the side that the pan's going to sit on. And I would elevate it like 5 centimeters above where it should be normally. Then that would help deal with the all the CO2. It'll burn it up a lot more effectively. So you could then have the stove working in like an enclosed portaledge or whatever, with a reduced potential of getting carbon monoxide poisoning. And also with that kind of stove, the fuel, you can carry more fuel. It's less bulky to carry petrol. Like one thing of petrol, like a litre of white gas, would that last you like 3 days or something? 3 or 4 days, depends how efficient you are. And if there's two of you in a portaledge, but if you're careful with it, it can last quite a long time. Where the equivalent sort of gas would probably take up, like twice as much room in a whole bag. If it's like really cold, probably wouldn't be that cold. You wouldn't be able to climb if it was this cold. But like sometimes you want to keep the pump from those kind of stoves. You want to keep them warm, so you want to put them either in between the sleeping bags, 2 people sleeping bags, or you put them inside your sleeping bag in like a Ziploc bag or something, because they can the O-rings. You can get like a super cold version. I think it's blue, but the standard red one, the O-rings can a bit like the space shuttle. Why the space shuttle blew up, but the O-rings can go a bit weird, so the fuel leaks out. So so it's minus 40. You put your fuel, so it's minus 40, and you've just left the pump in the bottle, and the bottle's lying on its side, and you go to get it, and what you'll find out is that the fuel has been leaking out onto the floor from the bottle, because the O-rings have not been working, or the little ball thing inside it they've shrunk or something in the cold. So anyway, always leave the bottle upright. So when you finish cooking, I'd always take the bottle off the stove and stand the bottle upright, or take the pump out and then put the lid on and put the pump somewhere else inside your clothing or whatever. But another good advantage is that you can run the stove inside the portaledge without a pan on it, and you shouldn't really be producing that much CO2. So you could, like the Russians, I know, because the Russians do a lot of gnarly big walls, like winter walls, and they struggled with these modern stoves, and that they found that they, when it was super cold, an old-fashioned stove system would be producing a lot of heat, so it'd actually get very warm in a portaledge. But the modern stoves, they were so efficient that there was very little heat escaping, so they were freezing their asses off. So you can, if you crank the stove up you can't really dry stuff, but you'll find all the water will start melting off in the top of the portal edge, start dribbling down, going down the sides. But you can create a very, a bit of a, I wouldn't say it was cozy, but it's, it can take away some of the grimness of being like, of the constant cold of being somewhere where it's just below freezing all the time, which can be kind of weigh you down after a while. So yeah, so my advice would be to try and build a system. I've not the stoves I had as hanging stoves. It was the Dragonfly, because the Dragonfly you can attach again the housing into the bottom of a larger pan. You have to cut a hole in for the burner to come through, and you probably want to use I use a steel pan, like a thin steel one, like an MSR one. But you just have to get the pan still fit together. You don't want it to be too tight where the small pan goes inside. Needs some space around. Like if you want to make it super efficient, you could put like a heat exchanger on the inside of the large pan and do it that way. But it's getting more difficult. I did actually build it was a Dragonfly basically integrated into like a jet boil or something. I think I took that to Patagonia. I don't know how well that worked, but it was the fuel bottle. You need to have some wire on the bottom, and the fuel bottle kind of sits in the wire. So you've got the pan supported by the wires, and then you got the stove bottle at the bottom of it, and then the fuel bottle, because the fuel bottle has to be like kind of horizontal, so the fuel feeds in, and that's kind of sitting horizontal underneath the burner, and it's good to you got to be careful. You when you're priming it, you don't put too much fuel out, and the fuel. Like the classic thing is you really need to understand how the stove works. Like if you let some fuel out, and then turn it off, the fuel's still going to come out for a while. And then you light it, and it's like lit. And then the classic thing is you leave the stove is actually on, so the fuel is still coming out, and it's not primed. So you light it, and it sets on fire, and then the fire gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the fuel starts leaking out on fire from the stove down onto your sleeping bag or something, and then probably everything sets on fire. So you really have to know which side is on, which side is off. Like you could probably write it down somewhere on the thing, but you just have to be really good at priming those kind of stoves. Like one option is to take a little squeezy bottle of methylated spirits and put methylated spirits onto the part you need to prime, which is the tube. Because what happens is the tube has to get hot, so when the liquid fuel is going into it, it vaporizes because it's so hot, and then it comes out as a gas. So until it heats up, it's just coming out as liquid, and then as it gets hot, then it'll start vaporizing into a that's why if you turn the stove off for maybe 30-40 seconds and turn it back on again, it just lights like a normal gas stove. But if you leave it for like 5 minutes, if you light it, just liquid comes out. So like personally, because I feel confident using those liquid stove, I would use like an MSR stove and not a an MSR Whisperlight, or maybe a Dragonfly. The problem with the Dragonfly is it's very controllable, which is good because it helps you control the amount of fuel you use. But it's a little bit more because the control thing and where the fuel comes in is actually quite long, that piece of metal. So it's a little bit more. It could more easily break if you're giving it a hard time. So what you want to make sure your stove is kind of inside the middle of your whole bag. That's safe. Or it's, blah blah blah. Have you got any beta on getting up and down over schrunds safely? That's a berg schrund to the layman. And also how to haul bags up glaciated, snowy approaches. So berg schrunds are always a pain. Like if you're ever soloing, if you're soloing or you climb with somebody, often getting over the berg schrund is often one of the harder parts of it. And getting down over a bergschrund is also it's often one of the hardest things. Like sometimes you get like a double bergschrund, which is even worse because you manage to get over the first one and then you like end up falling into the second one. So like a bergschrund is basically just like a crevasse. Like a crevasse is caused by gravity, and that the glacier is traveling down the mountain, and a bergschrund is kind of the same. It's like where the ice joins the rock and the glacier is moving down. The weight of the ice is moving down, so it creates like a big crack. So yeah, generally you always seem to. It's very rare. I can't think of ever not being able to get over a bergschrund. You always seem to be able to get over it. Sometimes it requires quite a lot of like chopping, and you might have to like go down, down somewhere. Often it's not the best to go across right at the very top of a bergschrund. Like often you can often like traverse across a bergschrund, even if it's kind of overhanging, and kind of chop into the bergschrund and like get across. Like sometimes a bergschrund, it's just it's like 20 feet above you, so it's but there's always a way to get across a bergschrund. If you were soloing, that would be not ideal. There's a really famous story about Thierry Renault, and he wanted to solo the north face of the Dwats, and I think maybe Stevie Haston was the first person solo north face of Dwats, like in the winter time. So Thierry Renault, he wanted to borrow. No, Andy Parkin had soloed the north face of Dwats maybe, but he wanted to borrow Andy Parkin's scarf, because Andy Parkin, when he did Beyond Good and Evil, he wore this scarf, and Thierry Renault wanted to borrow it because he thought it was like good luck. So Andy Parkin said to him, like, if you're going on the Dwats, if you're soloing the Dwats, you should always take like 3 ice axes in case one of them breaks. Because in those days, probably in the 80s, 90s, ice axes weren't that good. It wasn't unknown for your pick to break. So I always used to have a spare pick in your rucksack. And then I think when I soloed North Face of Dwats, I think I also had like 3 ice axes just in case. But I think by then ice axes got a bit better, but they did sometimes used to break. So Thierry Renault like skis up to the north face of the Dwats, and he did he ski up or did he walk up? Maybe he walks up or something. He like walks up, and this is a stupid story really. But he walks up and he gets to the bergschrund, and he climbs over the bergschrund, and the bergschrund on the Dwats can often be quite big. He climbs over and he starts climbing up, and he's climbing up, soloing up, and suddenly like one of his ice axes just breaks, like the head just like snaps off his ice axe. Probably had like a not Charlie Moser, probably had like a Simon ice axe. Anyway, the head just breaks off his ice axe. He's like, oh no, like this is a sign, I must go down. So he takes out his other ice axe and he starts like down climbing, and then he suddenly slips, and on the ice, because it's not very easy down climbing if it's like really hard ice, he slips and he starts falling, and he falls into the bergschrund, and he thinks he's going to die, and instead he lands in this bergschrund, and he survives. And next to him there's like a pair of skis, just like someone must have thrown them in the bergschrund, some old skis when they must have skied up and just started throwing the bergschrund. Anyway, so they fit his boots perfectly, so he clicks them on and he skis all the way back down to Chamonix. So the other version of the story is he falls in the bergschrund and he lands on the skis, and the skis just clip into his boots, and he like skis off down to Chamonix. So the scarf was very lucky either way. So getting your whole bags to the bottom of the route again in winter is very difficult. Probably the best way to do it is to get a pulk, get like a kiddie sledge is a bit generally too small. You can buy a pulk for about €100, like a proper. If you go to like Aiguille Snow Sled used to make them. Now Aiguille sells them. It's just like a blue kids sled, but it's a heavy duty, and it's wider and it's more stable, and you can like strap things onto it, and that'd be well worth the money. Like if there was if you're going on like a proper big wall for a while, if there's like a few of you, then you might want one each or something, and you basically put your whole bag on there. Like you can strap it onto your whole bag, so the straps are on the top of the top when it's in the pulk. That means you can sort of put it on and sort of use it as a normal whole bag, and then when you get to a flat area or it's steep or whatever, you can just like put it on and pull it up. And you can actually pull a pulk up some very steep terrain if you've got crampons and stuff, or you're skiing. So you can actually go up, like 30 degrees sort of snow slopes and things. And they're good. If like in deep snow, like carrying like a 40 kilogram whole bag, it's just horrendous because you just keep falling. You just keep going into the snow. Like you think your legs go deep into the snow when you're walking with hardly anything on. Like it's just terrible. And a whole bag, you think it would slide quite easily on the snow, but it tends not to because it's just not. The lid kind of like digs in. Like you could make. Like some people have made these kind of. If you look at U.S. Army full rollable stretcher, people have made those out of polyurethane. It's like plastic. It's just like a sheet of plastic, and you cut it the right way, and you can like fold it around the whole bag and secure it, and then it'll slide. The end like is wrapped around the front of the whole bag. It'll actually slide along. And that would be quite a good option if you're going somewhere and you didn't want to carry it like a pulk or sort of stuff with you. But it is just a pain in the arse. Like I think when we climbed like the Lafayette on the Drew, I think we had to walk in. Maybe we did like two walk-ins. So we carried all our stuff from the Grand Monte. We had to descend down to the glacier, across the glacier, and then climb up to the bottom of the Drew. And we did that twice, and then we ended up the strap came off the bottom of the whole bag when we were hauling. We lost one of the whole bags and the portal edge, so we had to descend again and then replace those things and descend the third time. So, but the Drew is quite good for that because you're actually kind of going downhill most of the way. If you're going up to like the Grand Girasse or whatever, it's a lot harder. Like the Eiger's the same. The Eiger's actually quite easy getting to the bottom of the Eiger. You kind of get the train. It's directly opposite. So you get the train up and you just kind of traverse around to the bottom of the Eiger. But even then, if you're carrying a lot of whole bags and stuff, it's always just work. So just got to be willing to put in the work to get to the bottom. And once you like, that's often like the hardest bit. Is overcoming all the reasons why you shouldn't carry on because it's too difficult and stuff. Any advice regarding getting kit to the? How do you hold bags? How to hold? Yes, answer that one. Storing kit. Storing kit at the bottom of a mountain. You always have to be careful in that if you get a big dump of snow, it's very easy to lose everything. So you have to watch out for like avalanches coming down and wiping all the gear out and all that kind of stuff. So you generally want, if you're gonna go up to the very base of the mountain, you have to make sure that everything is clipped into something else. Like make sure all your bags are attached to something. You've got the gear in the wall, everything's tied together. Don't just like leave it. Don't just leave it against the bottom of the crag and think it's going to be there when you return. If you've got a shovel, always bring your shovel in last. Because if you got a shovel to dig all your gear out, but it's in with your gear, then that's not much use. Like sometimes you can get like tons and tons of snow coming down, so so sometimes you might have to dig quite a long way to find your stuff. I know some people have used like get one of those like Apple things that stalking people use. Like you can wand it, but make sure you make your wands really, really long. Make sure you got something in your gear that tells people who it belongs to, in case you don't ever. Sometimes you can't go back. Sometimes your gear just ends up being left there, so it's good to someone to know. They might give you it back or something. I know people in Scotland where their gear is basically kind of just got lost at the bottom of a route. Like it snowed so much that they couldn't find it when they got back to the bottom, and they had to wait till like the summertime for someone to come across it. So it's good to have your details in. Staying warm and dry on a winter big wall. Staying warm. the hardest thing about staying warm on a winter big wall is for the B layer. So that's why sometimes you're better soloing or knowing how to solo. You might be better just like the B layer, just hanging out in the portal edge and not necessarily doing any climbing and reading the book while you like solo pitch, especially if the weather's like really, really terrible. So, the other thing is like if you've got two B layer jackets, like the B layer wears both B layer jackets, it's worth thinking about taking kind of B layer trousers. You can buy very cheap, like your US Army surplus, or there's all sorts of Army surplus, like padded insulated trousers, like puff kind of trousers that you could that'd be good for belaying, or just make something. The bothy bag is good if you're belaying. Put it over yourself; it'll make you a bit warmer. Staying dry on any kind of winter expedition, camping, big walling, whatever. The main thing is you want to just always be brushing all the snow off you. So once you're going from the outside onto the inside, if you're going into the tent, going to the portal edge, whatever, you just want to brush all the snow off you, and make sure that you've got you get rid of all the snow before you start getting your sleeping bags out or putting the stove on, because once you put the stove on, everything's going to start melting. So you just have to be very, very good at being super scrupulous about cleaning all the snow off the soles of your boots. So having a brush is very important. Like if your weight's not too bad, bring like a proper brush, like a proper hand brush kind of thing. But it wants to be kind of stiff because you want to get the snow off your boots and stuff. But yeah, be really, but you have to be kind of really obsessive. It's like when you get into a sleeping bag, you always want to make sure you don't have any ice in your zips, because often the ice will melt out in your zippers and then they'll like wet your clothes out and stuff. So, but you're always going to have some degree of wetness and dampness and stuff. Like having good quality boots is vital. Having good mitts is vital. But you will get cold. You probably won't get cold when you're leading, but you are like, if you're, depends what kind of wall you're doing. If you're like a wintry wall where it's very slow, you might want to take a lot more clothes than you'd wear if you're going ice climbing or something. So really, really, where I guess what would I wear? I guess I'd have like the sort of fiber pile Pertex layer, and then if it was, I might wear my belay jacket if it was like really, really cold, and then I'd probably have some sort of thermal underwear or whatever. So maybe not that many clothes, but it's just how efficient your clothes are. You've got, so you really have to do it to know how to do it, I suppose. And have a very good sleeping bag system. Either worn really, really warm synthetic sleeping bag, like the warmest sleeping bag you can find, or a warm synthetic sleeping bag with like a down sleeping bag on the inside. So that might be a little bit lighter, but you got to have a sleeping system where you're not just dreading the nights. You need to have a system where you can get in it and all your clothes will dry and you'll be happy and all that kind of stuff, and not too miserable. So yeah, so good luck with that. Tell us how you get on. What's this one? Fishing for some advice on running in winter shirts. Biggest issue being excess moisture build up on skin, touching fabric, whether it's waffle fleece, merino base, or synthetic weave. I've experimented with all over the years on cold winter mornings in the Chilterns. Just can't get something that wicks away my sweat faster than I produce it. And secondly, that pulls it far enough away from my skin that when it cools, I don't feel the wet patches against my back, under my arms and chest, thus making me colder. Any windproof material over said fleecy fabric adds to the effect, as it seems to cage in the moisture. I'm thinking best option is to sew up a single one layer of tufted fleece material, body hugging, tailored to fit that A, sucks sweat away from the skin, transfers it to the outside layer, does it fast enough to keep up the sweat rate, thick enough that it can't store a certain amount of sweat within, keeping said cold sweat away from my skin. What are your thoughts on any material for this? And secondly, would a layer of cotton absorbent material lined on the outside of the garment mean that sweat is pulled away from the skin through the pile fabric and absorbed, stored on the outside of the garment by the cotton layer? I think one thing it's always good to do when it comes to the outdoors is don't have too high an expectation of ever being like 100% comfortable. Like you just got to think like, well, I'm not hypothermic. That's, and then like, well, I'm not like really, really, really cold, and then I'm not cold, and then at the very, very bottom of it would be like, I'm not, I'm completely comfortable, and I have no dampness. I feel dry, like I'm sitting in front of the telly watching the telly or something in a nice centrally heated house. As soon as you go out, like running or skiing or walking or climbing, you're going to start generating sweat. You're going to start generating heat. The better you are at understanding what all your clothes are doing, and also especially that a lot of clothes actually make the situation worse. Like if you're transitioning from your car to walking to the top of a mountain, often the clothing you put on when you leave the car are not designed for going up the mountain. They're designed to make you feel like you're still in the car. So you put like on a big fleece, and then you're waterproof, and you've and all that kind of, your hat and your balaclava and your mitts and all that kind of stuff. And you'll start walking, and within like 100 meters, like you're sweating your ass off, and you're having to start taking everything back off again. So the more you do, the more you know what to expect. And so you don't want to be walking up the hill freezing cold. You're like, I'm freezing cold now, and I'm working really, really hard. The wind is like blowing through all my clothes, and this is not comfortable. You know that as soon as you go off this trail going up the side of the mountain, as soon as you hit the ridge leading to the summit, that you're going to be directly in the wind, and you're only going to get colder. And you can maybe go a bit faster and try and generate more heat or whatever. But the more you've done it, you're like, actually, if I just put a windproof layer on, no, I don't need to put a big fleece on. If I just put the windproof on, that'll block the wind, and then I'll generate enough heat. And then then when you hit the ridge, you're like, actually, I'm, like the wind is like really, really cold. The air temperature is very, very cold. So I'll just put this like gilet on or something, or like if you know how to move and what to expect, you can put on your fleece and your down jacket, and you can start walking up the same mountain. But you just go at a pace where you never get hot. You adjust your zippers, and you speed up and slow down and all that kind of stuff. And you can do it. You can wear a lot of clothes and kind of break the rules of dressing appropriately. But what's the thing? You start off cold, that saying. There's a really good saying where it's like basically start out warm, sweat your bollocks off. Start out cold, sweat your bollocks off. So having, if you're going to be running and you're sweaty, like fit people generally quite sweaty for some reason, and unfit people. So you're always going to be generating sweat. So you're trying to minimize the discomfort and the chilling effect of that sweat. So the number one thing to look at, in my experience, would be you want something that dries as quickly as possible and absorbs the least amount of water. Because no matter how much something wicks, if it's like piss wet through with your sweat, it's gonna be cold. So you want something. The best way to make it absorb the least amount of water is it wants to be hydrophobic, which means it doesn't like water, it doesn't absorb water. And you also want something that's that's got the least amount of density as possible. So of those things, the thing that the most obvious one is like a Brinja top, which is polypropylene. So polypropylene is plastic, basically. A plastic top, basically a string vest. So maybe like 90% of the top, the t-shirt is just air. It's just so the air, the you can increase like the moisture content of the air in the little string vest holes, but that'll just be sucked out by the wind or go into the next layer very quickly, and then you will get some moisture on the surface of the polypropylene, but as long as your skin is retaining its heat, then that will like dry very quickly or dribble down, or it'll go somewhere. But you're always gonna, even something like that, like even if you were naked, you're gonna get sweaty and you're gonna feel the sweat. You'll feel the wind on your. I've not been running up any mountains naked recently, but if you come out of the water, if you come out of the sea, if you've been swimming and it's cold, it's fucking freezing because the moisture, the water on your body, it's like cooling you off super, super quickly. So you're always going to have some of that. You're going to feel like the more like in your message, the tighter the clothing, it means that so you've got a piece of material against your back, which is like, and the moisture in it that's come out of your body, the sweat, is at a temperature of 37 degrees. So although it's sweaty and although it's wet, it's the same temperature as your skin, because your skin is heating up the moisture. Like the sweat came out at 37 degrees, and it stayed at 37 degrees because your body is retaining it, keeping it that temperature. And ideally, what it's also doing is pushing that sweat away from you. Your heat is going to dry out that material, your body heat. Like, body can dry, is a very effective machine for drying material. But what happens is when that material moves away from your skin for even just a few seconds and then blows back onto it, the moisture in that material might now only be 20 degrees, and then it'll hit you and you'll feel cold and it'll feel wet and it'll feel clammy, and that's and if your body starts dropping, if your body's skin temperature starts dropping, your skin, as your body, like if your body temperature doesn't have to drop very much, like 1 degree, and you're going to be hypothermic anyway, but your skin temperature can drop. Your skin can get much colder. So your core temperature would have to drop by 1 degree. But as your skin temperature starts dropping, you're less able to warm up the fabric. There's that famous Ed Drummond, when he went to solo North America Wall, and he was in a storm for like a winter storm for a long, long time, and I think he had to end up eating his sleeping mat because he didn't have any food. But there's a bit in it where he says he farts and like it came out cold. And that was the thing that really, really scared him, because his body was so cold. Anyway, so yeah, it's probably a bit like pissing yourself because you're. Did I tell this story? Maybe since I've not told this story, but I was often like I'm looking after my son like 2 or 3 days a week, because Vanessa's like doing sort of supply teaching and things because she doesn't want a proper job, and so I often push him over to where his grandmother lives in Galway. So it's about like a 20 kilometer round trip. So I'll go there. I usually go by the coffee shop. So he's asleep, and I push him there, and he gets the coffee shop, and then he wakes up, and I have a coffee, and then he has a bit of a croissant or something. And then we go to the park, and then we go through Galway, go and see his grandma, and he has his lunch there. And I'm drinking loads of tea, and then at like 1:30, I start walking back to where we live. And any one day I was like, because I drink a lot of tea. For some reason I went through a phase where I was just like pissing all the time, and I was like, it's about, let's say like 10 k's walking back and pushing this pram, and I was like dying to have a piss. I was absolutely dying, but it was I just couldn't find anywhere. It's like on the longer main road. I just couldn't find anywhere where I could just. I was dying for a piss anyway. So it was always the thing about like, where can I go and have a piss? Anyway, one time I was walking back, and it was absolutely just like, I think Galway has, is it like 4 foot of rain? It's like one of the wettest places in Europe. It's just like insane. It's like, 280 days of rain a year or something. It's kind of crazy how wet it is. Anyway, so it was just like absolutely pouring with rain. And what did I have on my leg? I can't remember. I had on my legs, but I just had my shorts on. I had my because it's so wet. I don't bother wearing trousers because you end up with wet trousers all the time. So I just wear my Crocs and my shorts. Then I'll wear like something over the top. And I think I just had like a buffalo type shirt on, like a, because again, like if you're pushing a pram, you're going you generate quite a lot of heat pushing a pram, through Galway. Because I'm trying to walk fairly quickly because I just don't want to walk around pushing a pram all the time. So I'm sort of dressed as if I was going for a run. So anyway, but I was absolutely like, my Crocs were falling off my feet because my feet were just shoes were full of water and everything else. And I was like dying for a piss, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna piss myself because no one can tell and it doesn't matter. And I just pissed myself. And a bit like, when you go caving or something or whatever, is that called caving? Anyway, when you're in a wetsuit, it's a bit like that. And I was thinking like, this is so terrible. Anyway, so I told my son about pissing myself. He was like, "Oh, Dad, that's terrible. That's a terrible thing. You shouldn't tell anybody about pissing yourself just walking down the street." And anyway, then so he's now working at the supermarket, and it's not very far away. It's like 10 minutes away. And the other day he came back and he was like absolutely drenched, like all his clothes were just absolutely drenched. And he was like, he said, "I totally understand now how you could piss yourself and not think it was a bad idea." Anyway, so I'm getting off topic here. So if you piss yourself though and it came out and it was cold, that would be a warning sign. So other base layers which are very are not very dense would be the classic one is like the Helly Hansen, like a Helitech Lifer base layer, because again it's made out of polypropylene, so you got the same thing, same material, but it's constructed in a way where it's like a string vest, but it doesn't look like a string vest, but it's working in a similar kind of way. And then the alternative thing is if you imagine both the Lifer and the Brynja and more space layers, if you imagine like a shredded wheat, it's like that. Like the shredded wheat is against your skin, so it's like got all the air inside it and all the fibers going backwards and forwards, creating this very thin. It's trapping a little bit of air, but it's trapping some warm air, and the warm air is helping to transition the moisture through and out the other side. But the alternative is, like I think you've mentioned in your message, is if you have a brushed material, it's more like putting a brush against your hand, or it's actually like putting fur against your hand. But you think of a brush, if you put like a brush, like a hairbrush, not a comb, a hairbrush put against your skin, is you've got this thick layer which is trapping air where all the bristles are, but the actual amount of that material touching you is very, very small when you've got the tips of the brush. Now so your skin only has to warm the very tips of the brush. It doesn't have to warm the whole brush. It just has to warm the very tips. And once those tips are at the same temperature as your skin, then you probably won't feel them. So any moisture, the amount of moisture the tip of a piece of this material, can hold is tiny. So that's basically how like the buffalo fiber pile works. That's why fiber pile is more effective than say like fleece, because fleece is more like a wheat, a shredded wheat, not shredded wheat. Shredded wheat. It's more like something like that rather than like the very, very tips. So an item of clothing which is like brushed polyester, like a brushed polyester top, and that would be something like a Rab, Vaporize, Buffalo, Tech Light. There's a few different people are making that kind of thing, and generally it's got a shell on it. So the shell on the outside is like blotting paper. So Pertex or whatever material it is like blotting paper. So some membranes, not membranes, some shell materials would basically be hydrophobic. So they don't like water. So if you like a normal nylon shell, generally, the water isn't really the water doesn't really want to lay on it or go through it. It just kind of is repelled by it. So like a proper, what you really want is this this layer. So it could be the Brinia type layer, or it could be like this brushed polyester layer, and it needs to hit this layer that's acting like a blotting paper. So it hits that, and then it's that molecule. Those molecules of water, it'd have to be a drop of water, is spread over. How big is a drop of water? I don't know. So like one micron of sweat hits this material, and it's spread over like 100 microns of whatever that is, whatever a micron is, if you know what I mean, just like a blot of ink or something. So as it blots out, it's able then to be evaporated a lot quicker. If you get a glass of water and see how long it takes to evaporate, it'll take you a few weeks. Where if you spill the water on the table, it'd probably take a few hours. So it's that kind of idea. So so picking the right base layer and the right outer layer is kind of like if you have some kind of integrated system. So like the Rab Vaporize is an integrated system, but you'd have to make sure that when you bought it, the Rab designer actually understood what the latest version might have like shitloads of DWR on it. So it's they think what you want is a waterproof layer, but you actually want the complete opposite. You want a layer that absorbs the water. There's windproof, but absorbs the water. Now cotton is doing the same thing. Like if you wear a cotton t-shirt over a Helly Hansen Lifer or Brinia, is cotton is the ultimate, and wool as well. Like is going to absorb that moisture. But the problem is because cotton is quite dense. It's not going to dry very quickly, and once it becomes fully saturated, it's not going to absorb any more water. So it's very hard. It's very hard for one of these modern like Pertex materials to become. They seem to just keep working because they can dry so quickly. Where the cotton, it just isn't going to dry. So so like the Antarctic Brinia clothing is wool on the outside, merino wool, and then this mesh on the inside, and that's kind of doing that kind of idea. And you want to use the weather you want to use the wind to your advantage. Like, don't just always see the wind as being, like something that you need to avoid, because the wind is a perfect way of sucking all that moisture out of your clothing. So, and also clothing where you can, push the sleeves up. So maybe you push the sleeves upon your windproof, but you leave your base layer arms long or whatever, or you can unzip things and like you trying to make the most of the of all those kind of things. Like often if you overdress but then it starts raining, then the rain is actually cooling you down and you're not getting too hot. So it's just about when you stop with all these kind of systems. The trial is like you're sweating your arse off getting to the bottom of a climb somewhere in the winter, and you get there and then you have to put all your warm clothes on, but you're just cold because your clothes are so wet. So that's why often you would like take off your base layer and just put a new base layer on. If you like, say you're going to climb Ben Nevis, by the time you get to the 0.5 gully, you've been chasing everybody up there, is you could be sweating your arse off no matter how cold it is. So that's where you would just like take your base layer off. You'd have like a sacrificial base layer, take it off, put on your climbing base layer, and then off you go, and you'd be totally happy. So I guess it's like maybe you've tried all these things. Maybe you're just a sweaty bastard, and you're just gonna have to put up with it and stop whinging about it. Or maybe do something like cycling is a bit like that, isn't it? Like cycling is a tough sport because it's you can get really cold cycling, but you're generating a lot of heat. But when it rains, there aren't really very good systems for staying dry when you're cycling. So if you put a waterproof on, you're just going to get really, really hot and sweaty. So yeah, cyclists, I think cyclists and runners in general, proper runners are actually quite tough because they're depending on the engine of their body, like producing the heat on the inside to keep them warm. So you always have to remember that nothing is warm. No clothing is warm. It's just air. It's just like a bag of air. The warmth is coming from inside you. So that's there's always like I would say, in really cold place I've been, I'd say I only ever think of being really cold once, as in I was dying of hypothermia. As in the mountains, I've got a lot colder if I've been like kayaking and stuff. But I can only think of really nearly dying of hypothermia once. But then if I actually really thought about it, there was probably a lot of times when I was like freezing my ass off. But it wasn't. I knew I wasn't going to die. It was just really, really cold. But so yeah, maybe maybe that's why short memory is a good thing if you can do that kind of thing. So anyway, again, like see if that maybe that's all useless information. But anyway. Another question. I've always wanted a backless jacket, like crotchless underpants. I've always wanted a backless jacket that I can wear while carrying a big pack. Perhaps a fleece or windbreaker modified to eliminate as much material as possible where the body meets the pack, avoiding all the sweat and heat build-up. The jacket would also be easily removable without having to take off the pack. Have you ever heard of such a thing? The only thing I've heard of vapor barrier clothing where you've got non-permeable layer on the back. A few people make those. So the idea is that you don't get any sweat coming from your skin into your clothing. So if, say, you were wearing a down jacket, if you're going to climb 8,000 meter peak or something, you don't want the sweat coming from your back into the down. So that's one thing I've seen. The other thing is where you have a windproof front but with a mesh back, and the idea is if you're cycling, that if you're going through the air, you don't need a windproof on your back. Probably. I don't really know. I didn't have one. I think this company Calange used to make them. I think I got given one, and it's okay unless the wind's blowing behind you, then it doesn't work so well. Then it just kind of inflates the front of the jacket, and you might go too fast and get blown off the edge of a cliff. I guess if you want to make something like that, I'd probably maybe I'd look more at playing around with like do you need to have a big fleece on if you're carrying a pack like that, like a pack that's heavy enough that you're going to get sweaty. Like you generally, unless it's like really, really cold, you can get away with just wearing less clothes in general. And then if you're wearing less clothes, that's less material to be absorbed into the clothes, less sweat to get absorbed into the clothes. Like something like a windproof gilet or a, what do you call it these days? Like a sleeveless top is actually a very good piece of clothing because it's so thin it doesn't really absorb any moisture. And you could wear like a base layer, a windproof gilet, and then a windproof over the top. Like sometimes if you get 2 layers of like windproof material, Pertex, it don't work so well. But you could try with something like that. You could try, some people put, those, you can get like power stretch arm warmers. Maybe you'd put like, wear like arm warmers instead of putting too many clothes on your front of your body. I don't really know. I think with a lot of those things, it seems like a good idea until you try it. then it's not. It doesn't seem such a good idea. But you could probably expect some cycling company probably make something like that, or you could just make it. But I think you probably want something on your back layer. Like the problem might be something else that's not. You might be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Maybe the problem is some other aspect. Maybe it's you're just very sweaty. Maybe I get lots of people who are very sweaty sending me messages. So next question. My name is Brandon. Go Brandon. What's it now? Go fuck you. Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck Brandon. Anyway, where it is. Hello, my name is Andy. Hello, Andy. My name is Brandon, and I've been climbing for a couple of decades. I still manage to be pretty bad at it. Me too. In spite of the fact that I have access to your excellent books. Thank you very much. I have a question about setting up a rappel when you're above the anchors. Let's say you're on the top of a wall, and the anchor consists of 2 bolts with wrap rings. To reach the rings, you must go belly down and reach down, thread the rope. How do you get below the anchor to load it? I would appreciate any help you can give, and thank you for taking the time to read this. My pleasure, Brandon. There's I remember in Australia, climbing Australia, in the Blue Mountains, they often seem to be or ice climbing. Actually, when I've been I went to ice climb somewhere. Like, all the anchors. I think you basically, some places you're not meant to top out. If you're climbing somewhere where you're topping out, then you want to use the anchors on some other route to get back down. But they're kind of not designed for that. They're just designed for like lowering off. The anchors can often be too far down to get to safely. One of the most important things to understand, which most people kind of know this now, is if you say there's an anchor and it's like 2 feet down over the edge of a cliff, and you're like, what I'll do, I'll just get a 120 sling and I'll larkspur it onto my harness, and I'll clip it in with a screw gate. I'll lean over, clip it into one of the bolts, and then I'll just like climb down onto it. Is if you take a factor 2 onto a sling. So factor 2 is that you clip in. So the bolt is 120 centimeters from your harness. When you're looking over the edge and you reach, you can just clip the bolt, and as you're climbing over the edge and you're now clipped in, you just slip off and you fall. You fall 120 centimeters past the bolt, and then 120 centimeters down the end of to the end of the sling. So you fall like 240 centimeters. If you were to in a laboratory, if you do this in your garden, if you tie 120 centimeter sling to the tree with attach it to something, lift 70 kilo weight to 120 centimeters above where it's clipped in, let go of it, let it fall 240 centimeters, the sling will almost definitely snap. If it's a Dyneema sling, it will almost 100% of the time the sling is going to break, which is kind of disturbing if you see it. Now, in reality, that isn't always the case, and I think in reality it's probably rarely the case, but it can happen because the difference is, in the real world, when you fall, you generally don't just drop into space 240 centimeters. You tend to like slide and slither and grab and whatever. And when the weight comes onto your harness, the harness has some kind of give in it. It compresses your hips. There's all sorts of things going on, and often that would just keep the peak force below the point where your sling is going to break. So what's the sling break at? Like 24 kilonewtons? I don't know. Is that carabiner? But anyway, it's but in the real world, like I've taken like daisy chain falls like that, where you basically take a factor 2 onto a daisy chain. I've seen things like carabiners break, like the gate kind of being prized open, not breaking, but basically the carabiner like bending open, wires breaking, all sorts of shit happens. But so basically, you just do not want to be doing that. You don't want to be, maybe you're going to get away with it and just being a lot of, like really raj yourself, like your hips are going to feel like you've just been run over or something. But you just don't want to be doing that. You don't want to take a factor 2 fall onto a sling. If you have a lanyard, say if it was like a Petzl lanyard, then a lanyard is dynamic, more dynamic than a dynamo sling. So you actually, it is safer, but even so, you just don't want to be doing that. Your carabiner might break or whatever. So with all these things, where there's rope, there's hope. So what you want to do is just get the other person to belay you down to the anchor. Just get the rope out, tie into it. Like often you won't actually have a belay. Someone might just have to go and sit on the floor or whatever. Like if you haven't got any belay, then use the sling. Reach over, clip the sling in. Potentially you're going to take a factor 2 fall onto it, but your mate is belaying you as well. So even if say you're sitting and it's just like a meadow and there's nowhere to anchor, like your partner goes and sits, like 20 feet away, 30 feet away. You clip in. You scramble over, you get down, you get safe onto the thing, and then you can belay them, belay them down to you over the edge or whatever. So there's not really a hard or fast rule, but where there's rope, there's hope. So just be aware of why the anchors are placed so badly. Like generally, on any kind of descent, the anchors are always going to be like on a ledge where you can just walk onto the ledge, or they're going to be placed on the top with a chain that goes over the edge. So that's like if you were, say you're sitting on a ledge and there's 2 bolts with a chain and the chain are going over the edge. What you want to do is you get your ropes set up, you put your brake, you put your prusik onto your friction hitch as a backup, get your belay device on, everything else, and then you take your lanyard, your sling, whatever, clip that into one of the bolts, and you just physically climb over the edge, hanging onto the chains, whatever. So you've got your backup, you've got your belay device on, you've got your lanyard, and you kind of get in position, and then double check everything, then unclip your lanyard, and then go back down. But you just don't kill yourself trying to get down to an abseil. If you're having to do that, you've probably missed an abseil. Like if you're looking down, like in Munari or somewhere in Australia, you could look down and it'd be like bolt belay, and you'd have to go down some death gully to get to it. But actually there's a belay above you. You just didn't see it, where you abseil down a clean bit of rock. You don't go down some death gully. So like generally, if someone's taken the time to put some bolts in, they would have done it in a way where you're not going to kill yourself trying to get to them. And if you can't get to them without killing yourself, then they're not meant for you. They're meant for someone just like lowering off or whatever on some other routes. You always have to be careful of, like, bolts are actually very dangerous because they can, you can get this kind of tunnel vision, like, oh my God, there's a bolt over there. That's where the route goes. And someone told me a story. They were climbing in, I think it was the Calanques, and the guy was climbing up, and he was on this bolt, and he saw a bolt around the corner of this arête, and he thought like, oh, that must be where the route goes. And he went around this corner. He was like climbing up, and he was doing these bolts, and it was like really, really, really hard. And he got somewhere, and he said, he shouted to his friend like, "Take me there," because he was around the corner. He thought it said, "Take me off," and I think he must have been like holding onto the rope. So the climb, where you hang on a bolt, but you don't. If you got a lot of rope out, you often just hold onto the rope underneath the bolt, just so you're holding yourself. And then he started doing the move, and when he fell off, he wasn't on belay. He took like a massive fall down the route. He survived, but that's another thing is communication. So yeah, it's, like I always say, it's good to limit the amount of talking if you can especially on a long route. Just keep it very very simple. Like nothing like I feel very safe up here. Oh, are you safe? That kind of stuff. So yes, hopefully that was of some use, Brandon. So hi Andy, came to speed. I know you've done various clothing experiments, and while cleaning some of my kit, hopefully for winter ventures, I started to think about the feasibility of adding down to my older jacket. I wondered if you had ever done anything similar or had any tips. I can see it being a bit of a faff and potentially become a feathery nightmare in addition to ruining a perfectly serviceable jacket, but it might produce a decent end result. So I would say 100% don't do it. Like once you open that, it's like a gate to hell. Once you open those seams and those feathers start coming out, your whole house will be full of feathers. So if you got like a down product, like down doesn't, if it's of decent quality and you haven't got any holes in it, like the down is always still there. Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's the analogy? Must be an analogy somewhere. It's still there. It's not gone anywhere. But what it is just covered in human gunk and sweat juices and all that kind of stuff and old beer and whatever. It's all kind of like this. So you just have to. The best thing to do is don't be shoving more down in there, because the down that's in there is the right amount of down to be in there. It's just pointless putting more on top as well. So all you have to do is get it dry cleaned. So if you get it dry cleaned, I don't know what dry cleaning is, but when it comes to down, it is very effective. It's just going to it's going to comb all you down and blow dry it and shampoo it and all that kind of stuff. You'll get like a down jacket back and you'll be like, oh my God, this is not my jacket. This is somebody else's. Mine was black and this one's red or something, but it's just black because it's so dirty. But if you're going to get it dry cleaned, you have to get it dry cleaned by someone who specialises in down products. Now, when I lived in Sheffield, there was like a really good shop that dry cleaners. I can't remember what they're called now. But if you ring up, if you look on the websites of most down producers, they're gonna have an address for someone they recommend for doing down. I can't think, what was it? Down. But anyway, don't take it to an ordinary dry cleaners, because they might just fuck it up basically and just ruin your down jacket. Now the worst thing to do is to like a sleeping bag. You should never. Maybe big down jackets are the same because they have baffles inside them. The baffles are actually very fragile because often they're just made out of like insect netting, like out of a tent. They're very very thin, and if you've got like wet down in there moving around in a washing machine, it can just like wreck. It can just rip all the baffles out. So yeah. So the classic thing is you tell someone to go to this specialist down person, but they don't. They just go to like an ordinary dry cleaner, and it comes back like ruined. So yeah. But I have had sleeping bags dry cleaned in dry cleaners where they just said they could do it, and they did a really good job. So I think we had like two sleeping bags, 2 Montaigne sleeping bags that you probably had like a year's or 2 years every night sleeping in them, and they were like pretty grim. And yeah, when they got dry cleaned, they were like looked amazing, and then someone stole them. So yeah, this is I've just started wearing glasses, and this will be my first winter when I have to factor them into my clothing. Annoying, I only have to wear them to read, and without them I can't see a guidebook or map. It may seem like a trivial detail, but reading a topo mid-pitch or checking the map in a blizzard are critical. I'm interested in how you manage or switch between glasses, sunglasses, and goggles. How do you deal with iced up specs? How does it all work with the balaclava, hoods, and hats? Do you use contacts, and how, and if so, how do you manage that particular minefield? No, oh God, glasses. Now I wore glasses for years and years and years and years, and it became such a pain. I think after I went to Antarctica in 2014, I just decided it was just too much of a pain. So I actually had laser eye surgery, which was very, very effective. I suddenly had like perfect vision and all that kind of stuff. I think on an aside, I was, when you have laser eye surgery, you're supposed to you go and then they're like, you have to bring someone with you, because I just thought you'd have to bring someone with you. But I didn't bring anyone with me. So when I had to go down to London on the train. Then the next day I was in Bristol. In the morning I was doing a talk in Bristol for like a private school. And then then I had to fly to Dublin for a blind date, kind of, with Vanessa, who is now my wife. And I turned up for this appointment for my laser eye surgery, and it's very quick. It takes like a few seconds. You laid down. You're like, this lasers your eyes. It's not painful or whatever. And then he kind of fiddles with them, so they does something to them, and then you get up, and I was like completely couldn't see anything. Like I was completely, everything was just a blur. And then he was like, "Where's your person?" I haven't got a person, and I have to get to Bristol on the train. And I was like, "Fuck, what am I going to do?" And luckily, there was someone going to Waterloo Station or whatever it was with somebody else, and they said in a taxi, and he's like, "Oh, we'll take you to the train station." Like someone who's also got their eyes lasered. So I got to the train station, and I got out of the taxi, and I was literally could hardly, everything was just a blur. And I couldn't see I kind of managed to follow the sounds to where the trains were, and I couldn't see the boards telling you what trains were what. And I had to ask somebody, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I'm blind? Can you tell me where the train is?" So someone managed to get onto this train, and luckily someone met me at the other end who I was talking for. And it was just like that the whole for several days. I had all these drops you have to put in your eyes. And then I managed to get, I remember saying that the doctor before he did the thing on my eyes was like, "Oh, there's all these things. You mustn't have a shower. You mustn't do all these things." And I was like, "What about having sex?" And he's like, "Because I've got a hot date in Dublin tomorrow night." And he's like, "Oh my God, in all my years of doing this job, no one asked me, can you have sex?" And so yeah, I was just asking just in case. Vanessa's a good Catholic, but anyway, so nothing like that would have happened. So yeah, so when I eventually got to Dublin Airport, and Vanessa met me, I couldn't even see her. It wasn't very romantic because it was just someone there, like a blurry person. So anyway, my eyes did get better eventually, and they did get wet. I went hill walking. It was terrible. I was walking around it was like winter time in Wicklow Mountains, and I had like sunglasses on. I looked like Bono or somebody. So, but it's only recently, like only this year, is it short-sightedness, long-sightedness? Like I suddenly found it quite hard to read things, especially when it's dark. So close-up things like reading a phone, reading a whatever. So I've suddenly realised that I probably need to start looking at getting reading glasses. And I did actually notice that. I did think that, like, oh Christ, like if you were climbing and trying to look at a topo or trying to look at a message or something, it would be or reading a map or whatever. It could be really, really difficult. So I've not actually dealt with that problem yet. But remembering, so it was like me, Ian Parnell, Andy Cave. There's quite a lot of people who wore glasses, and actually quite a lot of people who wear glasses but just wear contacts. Now the only thing I can sort of think of, like the problem with like contact lenses aren't too bad, but can you get? I don't think you can get contact lenses for what did it say? Short? Yeah, it must be. You must be long sighted, are you? So I know people have done things like they've had one contact lens in one eye, and not a contact lens in the other eye, so they can read close up, but they can also see long distances. If that makes sense, and your brain just kind of works it out. And I did actually try that, and it is actually kind of effective. It just seems a bit mad. You have to get used to it. I tried like wearing contact lenses, which you could last. You could put them in for a week, but I just think it's a really bad idea to put something in your eyes for that long. Like your eyes is, you don't want to go blind. Disposable contact lenses I think are the only option, and just to buy a lot, buy a batch of them and just put them in, when necessary if you're going to go climbing, and then you just have to make sure you just don't rub your eyes or whatever, and then they come out. I guess you could like blow up your topos so they were bigger. I went to someone's party, and they were massive fans of that band Everything But the Girl from Hull, and I something like I managed to get the woman from Everything But the Girl, Tracy Thorne, to send a message saying like, hope you have a great wedding or something, but no one could read it because everyone was in their like late 40s at this wedding. Like I said, oh look at this, it's from Tracy Thorne. Everyone was like, and they were like holding the phone like at arm's length trying to read what it said and stuff. So yeah, I don't really have any like glasses. Yeah, glasses are just a pain. You can get some stuff that reduces fogging, which you get for goggles. For you can put it on. You post put it on the inside of like cameras for going under the sea and stuff. It's called like seal wax or something. It's something you put on your lenses, but for wearing balaclavas and all that kind of stuff, it's just a nightmare. Like Ian Parnell was like really blind, but he spent a lot of time just not having his glasses on, or you just have that horrible thing where you're always like looking through your glasses, which are all steamed up and everything else. So it's I think you just need to take up a different sport. I think something where you don't have to, but like anything like running, kayaking, cycling, anything physical, maybe fly fishing. Maybe fly fishing would be what I'd get into. And you could just have your little glasses where it's like half at the bottom. You look down like a teacher. You can do your flies up. With your little glasses on. So I guess that's I'm sorry, I've not really got a good answer for that. So yeah, anybody got any things about glasses? Then send it in. Well, what time have I got? I need to have a cup of tea. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap it up now. So I think I will try and do another podcast. I will try and get back into the habit of doing more podcasts. Do a podcast every week. And any good podcast recommendations? I was on this podcast recently, the Unconventional Soldier podcast. And I've just listened to one recently, and it was about the future of nutrition for soldiers, which was someone talking about preparing food for people rowing across the Atlantic and all that kind of stuff. So I'd recommend listening to that because it's got some interesting stuff about stuff. So yeah, any books? I don't really read any books. I watched that Nims film, the 14 Peaks film. And I thought it was really good. He's an intriguing character because it's like me. Like if you met me, if you'd read stuff I'd written, then you met me, I'd be completely different from the person who was writing. Like I sound like in my proper writing, I sound kind of a bit morose and kind of intense and all that kind of stuff. Where if you meet me, I'm more like like a comedian or something, and not like how you think I'd be. So Nims is probably a bit like that. Like he comes across in his writing as being incredibly arrogant and all that kind of stuff. He makes like Reinhold Messner look like Pee Wee Herman or something. But I think the documentary, is it 14 Peaks or something? He just comes across a lot better, like the real him. I think maybe a lot of problem with people like, not a problem with people like Nims, but the Nims is living in a world where it's like people play lots of golf. No, don't be horrible to people play, but we live in a world, where when you're watching YouTube and those like videos come up at the start of YouTube, like, hi, if you want to learn about, insider trading, come on my course, blah, blah, blah. It's those people who are like these kind of car salesmen kind of people, like, yeah, I'm the best mountaineer in the world and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, it probably works not so bad if you're American, but I think in Britain, it doesn't, it always kind of comes across a bit weird. Like everyone's human. So, but I think in the film, you see like his human side a lot more. Like he's not invincible and invulnerable, and for all how amazing he is, he was also amazingly lucky, and so it was. I thought it was quite good. But my closing thought on Nims is he's kind of I forgot what my closing thought was. It's basically, he's not a man for the age, really, is he? Because it's an age where we don't celebrate people like Nims. Like, he makes the impossible possible, but we really want people who make the possible impossible, if you know what I mean. So he's it's kind of, we live in an age where everybody is where being vulnerable is your best asset. To be weak is to be is to be strong, and all those kind of things. So it's to be looked, to need to be looked after and protected and all that kind of stuff. So, like, funny, I saw something on UK, like one of my spies, there was something on UKC where someone said I was like the alt-right, the darling of the alt-right or something, which I thought was quite kind of funny. And Howard said how the police, you need to live in a world where everyone's afraid of the police or something. I don't remember saying that, but I think you just need to live in a world where the criminals are afraid of the police. That's for sure. So, but yeah, there's, because I've been going around with this baby. I've been going round to all these, hanging out in parks with all these mothers with babies and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing how many fucked up kids there are out there, like kids who can't talk and kids who are just like on their foot, like like babies basically, like on the phone, like on the screen and stuff. And so maybe that makes me alt-right, like not like all these people who think their kids have got autism when they've just basically there's some auto in there, but it's not autism. It's like the way you automatically give them your phone just to placate them and shut them up. And so it's I think my next podcast, I wrote this thing ages ago. It was like, it was just like a day. I was sitting in the cafe and I thought, I'd written 1,000 tips for climbing. Could I write 100 tips just for life? And I just wrote these like 100 tips down. I think it was called Don't Take Selfies or something. So maybe my new alt-right, to my alt-right audience listeners, not that I don't think anyone can actually define what alt-right is, but then maybe I'll go through that, see if it'd be quite interesting. I think I wrote it 2014. It'd be interesting if my older self looks back and it's like, what a load of knobs or something like that. Okay, that was it for now. Until next time, goodbye.
How much Did you know 77% of women who wear bladder weakness products experience intimate skin irritation?
As if having incontinence wasn't stressful enough.
But Tena Intimate Pads have been gynecologist tested and do not cause skin irritation.
Gentle on my intimate skin. I need to try Tena Intimate Pads.
Visit TenaSample.com for your free sample. Kind to skin protects like Tena.
Introducing Under Armour's Infinity High Sports Bra. Its ergonomic design is molded to support the natural movement of your body. With cord-out padding, the better breathability eliminates extra bulk without sacrificing support. And quick-dry padding is Under Armour's fastest-drying padding yet. When you're lifting heavy, running fast, and pushing yourself further than ever before, you need a bra that will help you go that extra mile and make you feel your best. Shop the Infinity High Sports Bra now at UA.com.